This is episode 2 of Discern Realities, a Dungeon World podcast. My name is Jason.
My name is David.
So our first segment is called What Happened Here Recently. And I had a game that happened recently, David, that I want to talk about.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
I'm running this thing called Bleakwood House. It's a series. The party is heading toward this abandoned haunted manor called Bleakwood Manor. It's on this island called Bleakwood Isle. So we had the first session recently, and that first session involved the party moving, basically journeying to Bleakwood Isle. So we started on a ship, and they had some adventures along the way, and then they got to Bleakwood Isle. Now, it was a pretty hard session. I opened with a really big fight with some Triton raiders who were trying to attack. They were attacking the ship, and it was a big bloody conflict. The rest of the journey was not easy because they had lost a lot of people on the ship and stuff, and their provisions were low. They got lured to this little island by this sea hag who they had to deal with, and they made it finally to Bleakwood Isle. Once they got to Bleakwood Isle, and this is what I really want to talk about, they encountered this family, this fisherman and his family. And as best they could tell, this family was the only people who currently lived on Bleakwood Isle, right? Bleakwood Manor being abandoned for some years. What was so great about this encounter was the fisherman was just really happy to see them. Like, he came up to them, he greeted them, he offered to have them over for dinner. Like, they roasted some fish, and he had a couple of kids and they were playing, and it was just this really nice scene. But the players weren't really sure how to handle it at first. Okay. Like, they were looking for all of like the deception. They were looking for the bad thing. They thought, this was a trap, like they were trying to figure out if the fish was poisoned, or is this guy being mind controlled? Is he actually an agent of the Bleakwoods? They were having this discussion, like, I just don't trust this guy. It's like, I don't know what's going to happen here, But in fact, it was completely trustworthy. Like, it was not a perilous situation at all. This guy and his wife, they were asking them questions about where they'd been and what they've been up to, purely because they were just interested and they just wanted to hear their stories, The kids were trying to play with them and stuff, and eventually the players settled into it, and it was no big deal. But I just thought it was really interesting that they were ready for like danger, like they couldn't believe that I would do such a thing, like just have this like casual, easy, like peaceful encounter at the end of the session. Now I think that maybe I was led to believe it's because I don't do this often, and they just were, these are my regular players, some of my regular players, and they were ready for like danger, they weren't accustomed to like me just doing something so nice. What are your thoughts on that? Like, would you have been surprised by that?
Well, so I've been a pretty regular player in a lot of your sessions, so I would be surprised by just having a random encounter with some friendly villager type NPCs who just want to like chat it up. So I would definitely be suspicious at first as a meta thing. In character, I might let my character not be as suspicious depending on the circumstances.
I'm probably exaggerating, like how nervous they were about the situation. There were a few beats though where they were like really like uncomfortable with it, until they convinced themselves. They used every tool at their disposal to convince themselves that this guy was not a danger, right? Like, I don't think a detect alignment happened, but something similar. Some character had something that allowed them to discern their motives. So I was thinking about this though. It got me thinking. Dungeon World has this move called Carouse, right? And the Carouse move is a special move. It's normally done at the end of an adventure. The party's just come back to town and they've got some coin from the dungeon and they're spending it. They're drinking, they're having a good time. And it's a move that allows them to possibly learn some rumors or learn about some stuff that might be going on, in the setting, find some helpful NPCs, that sort of thing, right? And I love that move. I think the Carouse is great, but I normally save it until like session, 5 of 505, right? Like, it's the end of the session. It's the end of a series of the whole adventure. It just got me thinking about Carouse and like the importance of like letting your players have those moments, those downtime moments. What are your thoughts on that?
I recently started a new campaign, and I have a table of brand new players, so I let them carouse real early on, just to kind of highlight the move so that they could see how it works. And also because they needed some really vital information that I didn't just want to just hand them. So I wanted them to do a carouse to get that information.
Oh, I see. So they had been adventuring, but then they kind of came back to town and did it.
Yeah, they'd been
okay.
Yeah, they'd been out and about, and they'd had kind of a string of bad luck out in the wilderness and been lost and hadn't had any luck like finding things out there just because of lots and lots of failed rolls. And they kind of needed to go to the town anyways because everyone in town knew what was up.
Yeah, they depleted all their resources and stuff, right?
Right.
We need more poultices and herbs.
Yeah,
right?
they're running out of rations. That doesn't happen very often, but they were almost out of rations.
Yeah.
So a carouse felt like an appropriate thing at that time, that early in the campaign, and it was a great time to kind of let the players explore what their characters were like. And for new role players, I think that it was a really good scene.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I think is worth talking about here. I love downtime moments with the party. Like, I think any chance you get to see the characters outside the context of like the action and the adventure and the slaying monsters, I think is really valuable. For one thing, it's a great excuse for you as the GM to ask like really probing questions about like characters' backgrounds and like just see how they respond to things, that aren't dungeon related issues,
Yeah.
And it's just a great chance for like the players to kind of like live in their character's skin a little bit and to show us like a side of their character that maybe we haven't been seeing so far. And I think those little downtime moments are really awesome. I've actually started to do this thing. I haven't been doing it as consistently as I'd hoped, but I've started to sort of work this into my routine. What I do is whenever the characters make camp or at the end of the session, but particularly if they make camp at the end of the session, I like to take a moment to basically go around the table and ask the players, like, what is your character doing during make camp? Like, what are they thinking about? Like, let's reflect on what's been going on, right? And they'll often tell me like, oh, I'm taking out my instrument, I'm playing this song. And then I'll say, well, what is that song? Why is that song important to you, right? Like, what does that remind you of back home? I'll go to the next player. What did you think about when character X did thing Y? Like, how'd you feel about that? Like, it's a great chance to really just like kind of ask some probing questions and to give the players an opportunity to tell you and to goalpost for you what they're interested in doing, right? So yeah, those little downtime moments are super important. I think it's easy to get caught up in the action of the adventure, but it's also nice to have like a little breather. So
yeah, I think that's something that gets overlooked sometimes, especially in a make camp situation where you just get a little bit caught up in setting the watches and making sure there's a interesting encounter that might happen in the night if the watches don't go well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's on the GM side and the player side, right? Because the players just want to get their hit points back. Right?
Yeah, they really do. They really do. But it's a great opportunity if you kind of let the camp feel a little bit safer, if they've kind of taken some measures towards that. Maybe give them a break and nothing happens in the night, and you just kind of ask them some nice questions about their character, and they get to learn more about their character while you do as well.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great. Well, that's a great place to end. Let's go to the next segment. Our next segment is What Should I Be on the Lookout For? David, what should we be on the lookout for this week?
So this week, I want to highlight something that we have used quite a bit. It is the Story Games Name Project. It was put out by Jason Morningstar back in like 2006 or something like that. He basically just challenged a lot of people through, I think it was Story Games forums or something, where he...
I think that's right, yeah. It predates me as far as like when I came back to role-playing games, but yeah, I think that's right.
I think that's where it happened, but I think he invited a lot of people to submit just tons and tons of names under like thematic titles and compile lots and lots of names for all kinds of situations. Like you've got like what are some of the categories that you can have?
I'm looking at the categories right now. So there are several broad categories. You've got fantastical names, contemporary names, and then historical names, and then humorous names as well. So those are like the broad categories. And then within those categories, there are subcategories where they just have like dozens of names and titles and, things like listed. And it's all kind of like category specific, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's super useful for character creation, for NPC character creation.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, the one thing I like to always, something I harp on in gaming just in general, but especially in fantasy gaming, is I think that like the fastest way to destroy any kind of like suspension of disbelief that you might have been able to invoke in your game is to have a bunch of characters who are inconsistently named. Like, we're all characters from the same region, but our names don't sound anything alike. Like we don't sound like we're part of the same culture or the same people,
Yeah.
Or I've got, or this is my PC and I've named him Sergeant Slaughter or, Captain Doom or whatever. Like, I think bullshit like that really, really like destructive of tone and of world consistency.
Yeah,
so I think having like these lists of names where you can like You know, for example, I like to choose, like, I'll choose like one of the historical names, like particularly like, you know, Babylonian. I think there's a list for like Babylonian, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe it's Assyrian. But there are several different like really nice like lists of historical names here that sound very much like fantasy names. Particularly if you're doing kind of a swords and sorcery thing. I don't know, you're just able to like add, like, breathe that much more like believable life into your setting. So.
Yeah, you take the time to use the tool, and it's way easier than trying to come up with a bunch of awesome fantasy names yourself. Why do the work twice?
Well, and there's some of the lists that are just straight up fantasy names, right? Like so there's one, the one broad category, fantastical names, has, angels and demons. It's got elvish. It's got Englishy. Englishy is really good. So is pseudo-English. Those categories are great because it sounds like classic McEurope, you know, like fantasy, you know, but without being just like William and John and Robert, right? Like it's got like, you know, it's kind of vaguely English sounding. That's a pretty awesome one. Tattooed Land, like if you're going for something a little bit more like Dark Sun, you know, or Conan, right? So there's some great stuff in here. It's a tremendous tool,
right? And it's available for free. There is a printed out version. I believe you have a physical copy, and it's really nice.
Yeah, I recommend going for the physical copy on this one. I often think that like in most situations you can get by with a PDF, but I didn't know the PDF was free. That's news to me. But I've owned this thing for years, so I haven't looked in a while. But the physical copy is great on this one. You know, the PDF is handy, but there's nothing like having that book at the table or at the ready that you can just kind of flip through it really quickly. Definitely recommend the physical copy on this. I can't remember where they can get it though. We'll post a link though at any rate.
Lulu, you can get it off of Lulu.
I think it's Lulu.
Yeah, you can get it off of Lulu.
Yeah, so the Story Games Names Project, it's awesome. It's a tremendous tool. And not just for fantasy gaming. Like, we play lots of games that aren't Dungeon World, David and I, and we use it for, like, every game we play, basically.
Yeah, it's great for any kind of story game situation where you want to be coming up with names. Thank you, Jason Morningstar, for putting that together.
Yeah, it's a tremendous work. Cool. Let's go to the next segment. Our next segment is called What Here Is Not What It Appears to Be. This is where we look at something with fresh eyes. Okay, here's what I've got this week, David. Adventuring gear. Okay. Not super exciting, I know. But let's talk about adventuring gear. So adventuring gear, it's a thing your characters often get at character creation, and you can also purchase it in the middle of the game. What it is it has a certain number of uses attached to it. I think it starts with 5, like a basic start. You make your character, you have adventuring gear, 5 uses if you choose that, right? And what it is, though, is it's an abstraction. So I'm in the dungeon, I'm a thief, and I am trying to scale a wall, right? And so I go to adventuring gear. I cross off maybe 1 or 2 uses of adventuring gear to say that I have a grappling hook and a rope, right? And then I add that grappling and hook and rope to my actual gear list, and then I cross off those uses, and now I have a grappling hook and a rope. It's an abstraction of the sorts of things that your character might bring into the dungeon with them, right? That's a fair summary of what it is, right, David?
Yeah, I always just imagine it as a catch-all for a pack of things that would be reasonably carried around by an adventuring party.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I love it because it does a lot of like heavy lifting in terms of not forcing the characters or the players rather, at the beginning of the session to wade through lists of things they can buy, you know, like purchasing lists, and have them like spending their coin at the beginning of the session to, I'm going to buy like flint and steel. I'm going to buy a bundle of torches. I'm going to buy this. I'm going to buy that. It's just, oh God, what a nightmare. I hate that about when games do that.
Yeah. It's like that.
I mean, what a fucking nightmare. So this is great because it just basically assumes like your character would be stocked up with the things they need, right? So we abstract this notion of gear. And so you just mark off uses and you just kind of create some fiction and say what your character had with them, right? It's awesome. I love it. Here's what I want to talk about though. I think you can actually take this idea and expand it to other types of gear. Okay. So I can't remember who. I think our friend Daniel Fowler brought this to our attention, and I think he got it from someone else. So we're not going to be giving proper credit because that person I think is lost to the void of the internet. Like I'm not sure who originally came up with this idea, but we've been doing it. We've been using this idea, and it's awesome. So what it is let's say, for example, you have just raided a wizard's tower, right? And you're in the wizard's laboratory. Now, as the GM, I might go ahead and describe all the sorts of things you see in the wizard's laboratory, right? Like, okay, there are books and beakers and things like that, right? And skulls and all sorts of things, candles, all the sorts of things. You paint the picture. And what the players can do is you can kind of say, you know what, like you can let them look around for the important thing, like the amulet that they came looking for or whatever, right? Or the special tome that they're here to acquire. But then if they want to take some more stuff from the wizard's lab, you can just say, okay, you have wizard's lab gear, 5 uses, right? And so now they have this thing on their sheet that's wizard's lab gear, 5 uses. And I love it because I've seen it used to great effect. Because now in the future, in another scene, they can say, oh, you know what? I'm going to go into my wizard's lab gear and I'm going to pull out this glass beaker, or I'm going to go into my wizard's lab gear and pull out this, this real particular rare mineral that I found, right? It gives the players a chance to create some of that external fiction, which I love about Dungeon World. I love like when we create that stuff that's external to the character, right? What do you think? What are your thoughts?
So I like it. It keeps you out of the shops and from having to have long shopping sessions.
Yes. Or on the prep side, it keeps you from having to like write down every goddamn thing that's in the wizard's lab, right?
Yeah, that too.
I mean, yeah.
That too. And it kind of gives you some more leeway whenever something happens and say your wizard's going to try and pull off a ritual and you're like, well, you're going to need some stuff for that ritual. They already have some stuff. And it's not just like, oh, well, I've got these random things that you described to me earlier. Will that work? And you're like, yes, that will work. No.
Right. Yeah. yeah. The wizard's lab gear, right? Yeah. You can use it in so many different contexts. They busted in on a cult doing a ritual, and now they can say, you can say you have ritual implements, 5 uses, right? Or they raid a kitchen in the middle of an abandoned keep. You can say, hey, here's like kitchen gear, 5 uses or 3 uses or 2 uses or whatever you think is appropriate. I think 5 is probably the upper limit. I don't think you want to go beyond that, but it's just a nice way of making the process of going through certain spaces meaningful without the GM having to like write down every goddamn thing that's in that space. And it also gives the players a chance to really be creative and like use their creativity to try to work some of those things, to kind of.
Yeah. I will say, while like this is a great tool, you still probably want to have a few items that are like named items, even if they
absolutely.
Even if they are a little mundane. Say, for instance, a bronze soup tureen.
yes, that's a reference to a very famous mundane item in our games, which is not worth going into right now. I take your point though. You help create a more vivid world when you pull, like when you kind of describe some things for players that they find. I tuck in little mundane and magical items all over the place whenever I prep a dungeon, or I have like lists of them, like, oh, here's some things you could find, and then kind of airdrop them in as needed, right? There are lots of great resources for that. Like there's this random generator called Abulafia, Abulafia, Abulafia. Mm-hmm. And you can go there and like it'll like randomly generate like lists of treasure, of different types. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I love
some of it.
Like
it's the algorithm's a little wonky sometimes, but like, it's slightly wonky sometimes. You end up with some really weird things where you're like, why would someone have made that? I don't know. But it's pretty dependable for the most part. Take this adventuring gear concept. I think it's something you can kind of you can expand upon it. You can wrap up different types of stuff into this concept, and the players really appreciate it. Like the players who really get into like creative problem solving, they love it. They love being able to say like, oh well, I would almost certainly have this particular herb because we raided the wizard's lab and we found this, that sort of thing. There's a lot you can do with it. So I'd like to hear what people think about it though. Like, I don't know if this is something that people have already been doing. I'd be curious to find out.
Yeah, I haven't personally been doing it, but I'm definitely going to start doing it now. I like that a lot.
Yeah, give it a shot. Yeah, just give it a shot. Just see. I mean, don't overdo it, right? Like, you don't want every goddamn room to be, like just like let them, like do that. But like, now you get Lord's Chamber gear or whatever. Like you don't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
But you'll know when the moments are right? Like when there's clearly like cool stuff in this space that the players would want to like raid, but you don't have it all mapped out. That's a great chance to use like an abstraction. So
sure.
Awesome. Let's go to the next segment. Our next segment is What Here is Useful or Valuable to Me. This is where we do some original content. Okay, so David, what do you have for us this week?
So this week, I'm going to continue on with my my Carnival of the Damned gear.
Okay, so question. Are you just going to do that for the next, 5 weeks? Like, are you just going to, until you go through all of those items?
I don't think so. I think
plan?
some of the items still need to be buried and not see the light of day because they weren't particularly good.
Okay. Well, this was a good one, I guess.
I like this one. I don't know if it's a good one, but I think it was interesting. So I wanted to go ahead and highlight it.
All right, what's it called?
So this one is the Trapeze Master's Hammock. So this is an item where you go into the carnival and you go inside of the main tent, and above you see a whole nest of ropes, and you see a hammock suspended among them. So you climb up and you see that there's like a skeleton inside of the hammock, and it looks like he died peacefully in his sleep.
Okay, I'm into this. Yeah.
All right, so mechanically, what you can do with this hammock is if a character makes camp and decides to sleep in the hammock, they roll 2d6. On a 10+, the player
Is there a modifier?
No modifier.
No modifier.
Yeah.
Okay.
So on a 10+, the player is well rested and gains back all of their health the next morning instead of partial health.
Oh, okay. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Okay. But you still have to do the roll.
Right.
So,
On a 7 to 9, in the event of an attack during any watch, he is always the last one to wake up and is surprised.
Okay. So on 7 to 9, it still works. You're still going to get all your hit points back. But in the event that there's danger, he's the last one to respond. Okay.
Right. Yeah, maybe even like very perilously so. On a 6 to minus, he can't wake himself. The other characters have to do something drastic and probably dangerous to wake him.
Okay, I'm into that. I don't normally like it when custom moves and items define what the 6- condition is. I like to usually have that reserved for GM hard moves, but I kind of like what you did with that though, so I'm kind of into it. I think it's pretty good.
Right?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So this one was supposed to be the item going with the 7 deadly sins motif. That this one's supposed to correlate with the sloth. So
yeah. It's
supposed to make sleeping attractive but perilous.
Okay, that's pretty cool. What do you think about this, David? What do you think about, and instead of the 7 to 9 condition as you have it listed, like you're the last one to wake up, what if you make the 6- condition the 7 to 9 condition, and then just leave the 6- for the GM? Because my feeling on it is, I feel like being the last one to wake up is, I guess that could be dangerous, but it's not super different from the 6- one, right? Where they have to do something drastic to get you woken up. It seems so similar, but I don't know.
Yeah, that might be bad. I was a little concerned about making that 6- condition the 7 to 9, because that would mean the 7 to 9 was not a success at all, I guess.
Well, I guess are they still going to get their full hit points if they go back to sleep in the hammock?
Yeah, you still get full hit points.
Yeah, okay, so I don't know. It doesn't seem too... I don't know. I think you can make a case there. We'll throw it out to the community. Let's see what the community thinks.
Yeah.
Should David make the 6- condition on his move the 7 to 9 condition? I'm not totally sold on my suggestion either. I was just kind of thinking out loud.
No, I like that idea. If you want to play a more lethal universe, then definitely go for that.
Yeah, because the payoff is good. Getting all your hit points back for make camp, that's pretty good payoff. So I don't know. It's just a thought, but
yeah. Yeah,
I like it thematically though. So the guy who was the skeleton in the trapeze hammock, when you originally found it, if you're in the Carnival of the Damned, is it because he just fell asleep for so long and he died?
Yeah, he just climbed. Okay. He climbed. He was the trapeze master, so he got up all up in his ropes, went to sleep up there, and no one could get up there to wake him up.
Nice. Okay, that's good. Yeah, I like that. Well, so this week, for what here is useful or valuable, I'm going to do a custom move this week instead of an item. So I do these custom moves in my games that are basically shrine custom moves. My setting has different gods who are in charge of various things. Party often encounters their shrines, buried in the dark places of the world or the forgotten places of the world. Oh, here's a shrine to this ancient god or whatever, right? I usually write a custom move for those shrines, to where if the players pray at the shrine and give an offering at the shrine, then they might earn a boon or a favor from that god, right? And it's a pretty simple custom move thing to do. It's something you can kind of work in pretty easily, and I think if you do it right, it has a nice risk reward feature. So generally speaking, all of my shrine custom moves tend to go like this. whenever you kneel at the shrine and do thing X, offering X, whatever it happens to be, and pray, roll plus. Now I say roll plus charisma. Now that's a bit of a controversial thing because a lot of people think that should be wisdom. And I think it's okay to do it as wisdom as well, just because that's how the cleric type characters call upon their gods, is with wisdom. But I like charisma just because I feel like if you're not a follower of the god, you're just there to kind of try to get like a benefit by offering up some praise. I feel like you should have to work that a little bit. And to me, that feels like a more of a charismatic thing. Like you are almost like it's almost like you're trying to turn the god on, right?
You're just trying to sweet talk. You're just trying to sweet talk.
You're trying to sweet talk him. Yeah. You're trying to get his attention. Exactly. I like charisma, and also it's also incentive. Like my players know that like it's dangerous to make charisma their dump stat because these shrines are usually like, tucked into parts of the world. And so I use charisma in that way. It's kind of a house rule, I guess, but I don't know. I think it works. You could do it with wisdom as well.
Yeah, I love it. I think that anytime you can get charisma back into play is a great opportunity to do so.
Yeah. I mean, I do it with items too. Like if it's an item that's like a sacred object of this god, and you have to call upon the god to like get the benefit of the item, I usually make that a charisma thing. Some people will make the strong argument that it should be wisdom, and I'm not even opposed to that. I think that's if you'd rather do that, then go with that.
Right. I mean,
but I choose charisma.
Yeah, maybe it's a conditional thing. Like if their player can justify that they worship this god, it's a wisdom thing. If they clearly do not worship this god and they're just trying to sweet talk him, it's a charisma thing.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, I think that's the right way to go about it. Well, so the specific shrine that I want to do today after all that long intro, it's a shrine to the rat god Rikisik. So in my setting, I have this ancient rat god. He's kind of the demon rat god. His name is Rikisik, and his name is supposed to sound kind of like chittering rodents, right? And so when you find one of Rikisik's shrine, which is usually a little statue of an eight-legged, multi-eyed demon rat god, right? You kneel at the shrine and you have to make a sacrifice, meaning you have to kill a predator of rodents, so like a snake or an owl or something. You have to spill the blood of one of these predator animals at the shrine, and then say a prayer to Rikisik. And then if your player does that, then you have them roll plus charisma, but I think you can do wisdom as well, but plus charisma in my game. And on a 10 plus, Rikisik will grant you the boon of like a little rat companion. It's kind of like a little rat familiar that will, he can only do the sorts of things that rats can do, but he's like your companion, and he'll follow your commands and things like that. On a 7 to 9, you get the rat companion, but just for a short period of time, like maybe for the rest of the session or something like that. And then on 6 minus, and this is how all these shrine moves work. On a 6 minus, Rikisik finds you wanting. And, I interpret that Rikisik finds you wanting to be that, basically as a GM, I take a hold on that player, and I spend that hold whenever I want, that single hold, to have that god that they pissed off, like intervene and at an inopportune moment, and fuck with their shit. So, that's my shrine that I've got there, the shrine of Rikisik. So yeah.
I love it. Sounds like a great set piece.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, these Rikisik shrines, they're usually found like in cellars or basements, right? And the human cultists of Rikisik are one of my classic like rogues gallery. Like I have their villains that show up in my games a lot. And these shrines are often like in buried places, in dark places, in underground places. And so it wouldn't be uncommon to find like a little crawl space somewhere, like really tight and small, where there's just at the end of it, there's just one of these little shrines, right? So
awesome.
All right, let's go to the next segment. Our next segment is called What is About to Happen. This is our little ongoing mini AP. So when we last saw Ramshackle Crow, he was attempting to infiltrate the Temple of the Peerless Star in an effort to steal a gem, which he believes they came about, or they acquired in an unjust manner, right? Remind me, David, they were basically extorting donations from people and then use those donations to buy the gem from some dwarves, right?
Right. So they would walk up on poor people around the town and then just start screaming sins that these people were supposedly committing.
Right.
And demand either payment or penance of some kind, but usually money.
So Ramshackle Crow is a thief who believes in stealing only from the wicked, right? And so the Temple of the Peerless Star, the followers of the Peerless Star are wicked indeed. They are moralistic thugs. And so when we last saw Ramshackle, he had just snuck into the temple, having slipped past a guard using sleeping poison.
Right, he knocked him out and stole his uniform, in case that wasn't clear.
That wasn't clear from last time. I was going to ask you that, actually. So he did take one of the silvery... Okay, good. And I said that as a result of your 7 to 9 roll, the complication was that a beggar who was nearby saw you do all. I don't think if I said he followed you in, but we'll say he followed you in. Okay. So that's what we're going to pick up. That's where we're going to pick up the story.
All right.
So you have just slipped into the Temple of the Peerless Star, and this back portion of the temple is pretty plain. You see a couple of rooms with simple wooden doors. The stone is very plain. It has no like ornate carvings or anything like that. This is a really, really practical utilitarian sort of space. I think there are 2 rooms in this, like along this hallway that you're in, one to the left and one to the right. Most likely, at least one of these rooms is probably where they keep stores. And then the other room is most likely, like an office of some sort, right? You're not in the main, like sept yet, where they do all the ritual and stuff. So you've just slipped in. What do you do?
Sure. So I'm going to try and figure out where they're keeping this precious gemstone. There's probably going to be some area that they keep their shrine materials that's tucked away kind of in the back before they bring it out for the processions and things like that. So I'm looking for that.
Okay, sounds good. Give me a discern realities roll.
So 8.
8. Okay, so you're going to get 1 question from the discern realities list. Where do you want to start your search? Like, just ask me the question whenever you're ready.
Right. All right. So I'm ducking into that office and taking a peek around there. And what should I be on the lookout for here?
So to the extent that this gem is extremely valuable, they probably keep it somewhere under lock and key, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a chance that that key might be in this office. If it's going to be anywhere, this might be the place, right? And in fact, as you go in, you see a very simple stone room, but there's a rather grand wooden desk that doesn't really match the otherwise simple and spare decor of this room. It's large, beautifully lacquered, has lots of ornate woodwork. It doesn't look like anything particularly like of a religious nature. It looks like just something that they probably also acquired through their extortion.
Yeah.
There's a wardrobe, a bed, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I'm running my hands
What do you do?
running my hands over the desk, and I'm thinking to myself the first signs of their opulence, and I start pulling drawers open, rifling through it, looking for...
Yeah. Give me another discern realities in this room, just to search the whole room, and you get a +1 for following up if you do that. So.
All right. So 9.
9. Okay, you're going to get 1 more question.
All right. What here is useful or valuable to me?
Indeed. You don't actually find a key of any sort. You are you're looking around, and you're. It would be really easy, right? It'd be really great if there was just like a key to a safe. Then you just have to find the safe, right? But you do instead. You find some correspondence. It appears to be a letter to the high priest of this temple. From someone who just signs their name with an initial, like a single letter. And so you can't really determine like who it's from. It just says F. But it says the contents of the letter, to summarize, basically state the safest place. It appears that they're having a correspondence about where to keep this heart gem, right? Like, should our temple keep it? Should your temple keep it? This appears to be part of that correspondence. And one of the things you learn is that they've decided to go ahead and keep it in the temple you're in, because this temple has an underground vault.
Underground vaults. Great. All right. So I'm going to proceed by going back out into that utilitarian kind of hallway and begin my search for a way into the underground area. I think that the underground is probably used a lot by thieves, so this might be something that I could get a +1 for searching for because of my human characteristics of being a professional.
Yeah, possibly. So you go back out into the hallway, and you actually hear someone behind you. Let's say the hallway itself is a grand total of about 30 or 40 paces in length, right? And it's not well lit. I think there's just like a single sconce on the wall, and so that's just casting some light in immediately around you. But you hear some sound like coming from the direction of outside, like from where you entered the temple. And you see like a vague shadowy shape, as well, like just beyond the full illumination of the torchlight in the sconce. What do you do?
Okay, is the figure moving in or moving out of the...
They appear to be just kind of like lurking and lying in wait.
Okay. I think that I look like one of the guards, at least in my mind. So I'm just going to try and play it cool and ignore him unless he tries to come inside, in which case I'll try and engage him as if I'm a guard.
Okay, that sounds good. So he doesn't appear to be making a move. Are you making it really obvious that you see him, or
no? I'm mostly
or her, whoever it is.
Yeah, I'm mostly just ignoring them unless they try and come inside. I'm too busy acting like I belong here, and I'm looking for something that I dropped or lost.
I'll buy that. So you can continue down the hallway to search for the underground vault. But you are now aware that there's someone skulking in the shadow, right?
Right. Are they like following me now, or have they stopped in the doorway, or?
No, it does appear they're following you, but they're keeping a safe distance.
Okay. I'm going to get around a corner and lose them and see if they try and catch up.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, there are a couple of like turns here in the back of the temple. So you're just gonna try to hide, basically.
I'm gonna try and do that maneuver where you step into a shadow and then your bad guy runs past and you grab them.
Okay, got it. All right, I think that's. Do we want to end there? Does that feel like a good ending spot?
Sure.
Or okay, all right, sounds good. We'll see how that goes. I'll probably call for a defy danger dexterity when we pick up. But I don't know yet. In any event, I think we see you, you slip into the shadow as you've described, and you can kind of hear their footsteps like stepping down the hall, right? And you can even see from around the corner, you can see their shadow like lengthening in the sconce light, right? They're getting close.
Getting closer, and I start to pull out my short sword. It's darkened steel, so it doesn't reflect the light.
Oh, nice touch. Good. Awesome. That's a great place to leave it. All right. All right, well, let's go ahead and close out the show. David, who is really in control here?
So, who's really in control here? That is, of course, the Gauntlet, our community of gamers. If you would like to get in contact with us, that is the best way. You go to Google+, you search for the Gauntlet. You can join that there. That's our main hub where we talk about the games that we're playing and community. There's also the Gauntlet Hangouts, which is an online community where we organize how many games did you say it was a month?
We currently have 24 on the calendar. Not all Dungeon World, but a lot of Dungeon World.
Right. So lots of story games and lots of Dungeon World, a little bit of OSR on Tuesdays still.
A little bit, tiny bit, yeah.
And then and that's a great place if you want to actually play some games with us. We would love to see you there.
And you just go to the community section of G+ and search for Gauntlet Hangouts, and you'll find it there.
Yeah. We are also on Twitter. We would like to get all the tweets. I believe they're called tweets.
Yes.
You can tweet us at
Gauntlet RPG.
Gauntlet RPG.
Yeah. Well, that was a lot of fun. Thanks so much, David.
Yeah, thank you. Had a great time.
All right. Thanks, listeners. Bye.
And give me just 1 sec.
I hear it. Yep.
My God. Always. Always.
Just be another stinger. It's no big deal. Just gonna wait it out. Okay.